under the circle. Good evening and welcome to Truth and Justice TV. I'm Dr. Jennifer, as you know, commonly known as Mum on the Run or DJ. And I'm here this evening to discuss a very, very serious topic. But I'm here with one of my sister friends. You know, sometimes you have someone's like a sister, a lady, and a friend. This is not just a sister friend, but she's a sister friend and she's a warrior woman. And I don't mean prayer warrior. I mean warrior in the sense of advocate. Yes. Okay? And her name is Mrs. Alimatu Dimonekene.
Thank you.
Welcome back. You've actually been here before.
Yes, I've been here 3 times.
Whoa.
3 times lucky.
And if those who don't know you out there,
Yes.
please can you just introduce yourself to them?
Yes, and thank you once again for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. My name is Alimatu Dimonekene, and rightly so, I'm a warrior woman, a queen, as we would like to be referred. And I do so many things, but in this capacity, I'm a women and girls' rights advocate, and I've been doing that for many, many years. And I'm a founder of an online-based organization trying to eliminate violence against women and girls in Sierra Leone, where I'm originally from. And I have won several awards for this kind of work because it takes a lot.
Takes a lot.
And you have to have the tenacity, have the audacity to even fight and break down patriarchy.
It's about breaking down patriarchy.
Breaking down the doors.
Having the audacity to step up to legislators and say, that's not right.
This is not right.
It's not adequately protecting our women and girls.
That's right.
But one thing she hasn't said is it's more than a decade's worth of work.
It's more than a decade.
It's a global effort, and she's
right.
a multi-award winner on different global platforms. So that said, well and done. Unfortunately, before you took your work to Sierra Leone, you started with the problems that we actually have here on our front doorsteps.
It has to come back home. This is my home. As much as I'm from Sierra Leone, I've spent more life here than I have in actual Sierra Leone. But yes, I'm working from grassroots, if I want to use that word, from Haringey Council. I grew up in Tottenham. And as you can imagine, the N17 postcode, this is us.
N17, N15,
we're olders now. We used to be youngers. But we know the streets, and obviously coming from that kind of environment and community, working many, many years in sort of the DSS, as it was known, and the benefit agency, the job center, and then moving on to the local authority itself. I've worked for more than 10 local authorities, from being a housing officer to an administrator to working on sort of the frontline issues that are facing communities.
We do global best practice frontline worker training. That means, I know Alimatu has gone to different countries around the world, so have I, but the one thing that we know is the problem and the threat and risk towards women and girls is actually universal. The common traits in all countries when it comes down to rape, domestic violence, and culturally there are some nuances indeed. But today we are talking about whether it is safe for our women and girls in the UK.
Yes.
What would you respond to that?
Well, I like the fact you mentioned nuances. There's so many. There's so many complexities around women and girls issues. But in terms of violence as it is, or what we know violence to be, it actually is on the rise in the UK. Absolutely. It might be, of course, in terms of welfare, economy, and all the other stuff, it still is a safe country compared to other countries around the world.
Others.
However, what we have seen, even just in this pandemic last year, close to 1.6 million murders.
Can you imagine?
Not murders, 1.6 million reported cases of domestic violence.
And that has just shot up.
It has just shot up because what the pandemic has actually revealed, I know obviously putting a damper on all our good work that we've all done over the years, it is actually putting a lot of pressure, and we have seen things that we never thought we could see. So intimate partner violent crime is on the increase. Unknown violent attacks are on the increase. We just have to look at the terrible incident over the past few weeks of the young teacher in South London that was murdered in the park by somebody she has never known.
Never known.
You
Stranger violence.
Stranger violence. And then obviously we know the government, which some of the stuff that they're currently doing, I'm actually very pleased and happy with. We've seen street harassment being sort of on the top of the agenda, and public harassment, we're seeing that being an issue. We know there's a discussion just today at the Conservative Party conference about making misogyny a criminal offence, a hate crime.
Now, those people who are out there, they might say misogyny. What is misogyny? Is that not just you feminists talking men down?
Yeah.
Misogyny is patriarchy can be at the root of societal ills towards females.
That's
and
right.
when I say that, those are some words, but breaking it down in simple terms for people.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can sort of put it in simple terms for people to understand how male dominance, male I would say abuse, and that's verbal as well as physical, can consistently, when it's systemically ingrained and tolerated, can lead to increased violence against women and girls?
Of course. I mean, misogyny is what underpins everything else that we see. Misogyny, patriarchal are systems, are structures that governs how society sort of sees and deals with women and girls. And in so many communities, whether you want to look at it from a Western perspective, an African perspective, a Middle Eastern, an Arab, whatever, women have never been treated fairly, women and girls. In some societies,
not been given that equal
platform. And if you look, for example, in the UK, 9 out of 10 murders are committed by men. And we know 1 woman every 3 days is murdered by a man. We know men murder women. As much as more men are murdered in terms of the crime data, but we have partner violence, intimate partner violence, even what we have boyfriend, girlfriend, partner relationships.
Yeah.
It tends to intensify the violence. And I think this is because in so many societies, male power has sort of an entitlement. You know, that men can use to exert pressure, to exert power, to exert control over women.
And sometimes, as we say, this can be cultural. In some diaspora groups, it's actually religious.
Yes, yes.
So one of the things I don't want you to think we're doing is male bashing, because there's still things within the sphere of domestic violence and domestic fatality.
Yeah.
There's even child-on-parent violence.
That's right.
And child-on-parent violence has even increased.
Yes, I mean,
which is quite shocking. And you think about this, how does this happen?
Yes.
And it's common in some communities more than others.
Of course. And I mean, the BBC did a brilliant documentary where a young man went through series and series of extreme violence in the hands of his partner. So we do have cases where women can be the perpetrators of violence, but we're talking about sort of the overall trend when it looks at domestic violence.
And when we look at statistics, they
don't lie, because what we are seeing in the UK, for example, the level of domestic violence, according to the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, shows that in terms of violence against women and girls, there is an increase. There's a decrease in murder, but there's an increase in sort of sexual harassment, stalking. We now have coercive control added to sort of the legislation to just compound the severity of domestic violence that we're seeing in so many homes these days. I mean, it's a lot. And children, as you know, in fact, there's a data that says of adults, 20% of adults have experienced some form of domestic violence from when they were 16 years old. It doesn't say male or female.
It just says
it just shows the experience. And if you start to experience violence at that age, you can just imagine.
It's going to have an effect.
It's going to have an effect, yes.
So we're going to pause for just a moment. And when we come back, we're actually going to look at what the government is doing about this and whether us as women actually do anything to maybe encourage this type of behaviour, whether we tolerate certain lyrics, whether we tolerate being talked to in a certain way. And we're also going to look at the very finite issue of whether there's a distinction between the levels of violence within the black community as opposed to that in the English, and that is the traditional English Caucasian communities. So see you after this break. Welcome back. And today we're talking about violence and whether it's safe for women and girls here in the UK. And before the break, we spoke about misogyny. We spoke about some of the issues within our society that lead to the increased level of violence against women and girls, including the issues around the pandemic, being locked away, isolation, and the fact that it's been fully put under the spotlight due to the recent killings that we've seen discussed in the media. Now, talking about the media, we have not seen as much coverage when the victim is actually a black victim or a victim of colour. Why do you think that is?
It has always been the case when it comes to reporting of violence against ethnic minority. There's a downplay, and in fact sometimes the language that's even used could be downplayed, and not much information sometimes is even given when reporting these cases of domestic violence or violence in general against or within the black and ethnic minority. We just have to use the example of Sabina, the most recent case,
and
the sisters,
the two sisters
who were killed.
That had an indelible effect on me. I didn't see the outrage that I would have expected. 2 murders of a sibling group who'd gone for a nice day in a park.
Yes. It took hours before the information got to the press, and that was after sort of a bombarding of activists on Twitter asking why is this not being reported?
Why are they not being
This was a
spotlighted?
major issue,
A
major
horrific
case,
crime.
horrific case, and not only were these women murdered senselessly, there was also issued about how the police dealt with the murders.
And you're right, the language that's used is often different when it comes to black and brown people. And one of the examples I will use, you're a North London lady like me, when we had a spate of girls being groomed in the 90s, that is to go out of the country and carry drugs and bring them back in, trafficked out of London. The issue wasn't, the language wasn't being used as they were being posed as victims or being trafficked. In fact, I used to have, battles because the police used to prosecute these girls rather than look for who was pimping them, trafficking them, paying for their trips out of the country. But because they were black and brown girls, they were criminals. They weren't being trafficked.
No, they weren't being trafficked.
And but now you look at the issues of what happened around Manchester, and those girls were victims. They were being trafficked. Those blonde girls were being trafficked.
So now we're talking about grooming gangs. But this has been something that has been part and parcel of our lives. Growing up in Broadwater Farm, we had lots of gang issues, but when cases were reported in the media, it was always black on black crime was the word they used to use. And obviously when other communities,
their culture, that's how they behave.
That's how they behave.
So we were the they
killing themselves.
They're killing themselves.
And the whole setup for me personally, that's just
it's a real big issue for me. The fact that sometimes through the lens of others, a female victim, woman or girl, if she's black or brown, is not considered a victim. She's somehow involved or party and parcel to the crime.
Yes, and not much pressure is put when a serious crime has occurred within the community, because the notion is always, oh, no one wants to speak, and therefore, just so you have to just look at the case of Stephen Lawrence. For me, that set the precedent that we're all looking at, how we should push whenever these issues are happening, how we should exert ourselves as community members. A lot of us now see ourselves as community leaders, so we present ourselves whenever there are issues. In my case, when there are issues, obviously, if you know the hidden crime, FGM, nobody wanted to talk. Being a survivor of FGM, having to access so many services and telling professionals what FGM meant, well, people used to say from school, social care, or obviously social workers, I thought that was your culture. Isn't that what you guys do in Africa? Well, actually, there had been laws in the UK since 1985 against FGM.
But
no activity because it wasn't seen as something that was violent.
But is that because the professionals, those frontline workers, had a lack of understanding, lack of sensitivity?
Well, in my case...
It's not that they didn't have resources. They had resources, but did they know how to use them? Did they not know how to reach out and ask for further information or experts to come in?
Yeah, well, for me, as a sociologist in this case, I always take the view that this is because pain in black and ethnic minority communities sometimes is downplayed by those that meant to protect.
We could talk about pain, and
I don't want to use the word, but there's a phrase that's been coined where you would tend to act more when
the responses to a Caucasian victim. And that's been demonstrated
and Caucasian women have used that to their advantage.
That's been
Whereas we have gone
clearly
the other way.
demonstrated in our maternity wards.
That's right.
With the high rate of black fatalities during
childbirth, or even complications.
I won't even say to you what happened to me during my last child.
I won't even say.
I was asked to wait in the corner, even though I was telling them I'm in labour. This baby's coming now.
Yeah.
I was actually told I can't go onto the ward.
Yeah, because in the medical,
maybe because I wasn't screaming, but I'm like, baby's actually coming.
Because they think we bear pain. We can withstand pain.
We can withstand it.
Yes, and we can tolerate abuse. So even when a woman goes to say, listen, I am a victim of domestic abuse. Well, what would you describe the abuse? So
what did he do then?
There are gatekeepers.
I can't see the bruises.
Yes,
That's another issue again.
Yeah. You remember when we talked about county lines?
Yes.
There had been girls taking, if you look at forced marriage within the Asian community, and now we know it's happening also in the African community.
Absolutely.
For decades, Asian girls have been saying I've been taken out of school to Birmingham, to Leeds, to Bradford, to Leicester, and they're taken from London, maybe Hounslow, West London, North London. They've been taken to Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and no one was acting. Teachers knew these girls were out of school.
The sad thing
and
now,
they'll come back and not return back to school.
The sad thing now is people don't know how to combat these things.
Yeah.
One, you can act as a best friend, next friend, who can report these things if the family is not doing so. Yeah. You can also seek out an injunction to have somebody excluded from your home, even if that person owns the home.
That's right.
You can get an exclusion order keeping them out of the home for a minimum of 9 months, even if they own it, and you can reside safely until you get yourselves reaccommodated.
Yes.
You can have obviously the occupation order, you can have the injunction keeping them away, not just from the home, but also from places of work. We had somebody that was hanging around places of work and around nursery. You can keep them away from other zones where they know that you frequent, so that you can be in safety while there's an ongoing case, or until you are actually housed safely. Now, before we jump into some of the other issues that we were going to talk about, I was going to say also there has been, by Professor Parosha Chandran, she has advocated for those who get trafficked or trafficked into the UK and subjected to violence to be treated as victims, because often the police come in and say, oh, well, you've been working without papers.
That's right.
And then try and prosecute them. And she's sought a level of legal protection for victims of trafficking. Which has been a big reprieve. And Parosha is also an advocate.
She's a
warrior woman, professor.
And in fact, one of the things, and I think this came as a result of what is already happening. So we now have the NRM, which is the National Reporting Mechanism for anyone who's been trafficked into the UK or within the UK, and it's operated by Salvation Army. So if you know you are a victim, or you have some idea somebody you know is a victim of
somebody
trafficking,
you know is a victim, you might have that hairdresser that says, auntie, please help me, I'm in a situation. You might not know what to do, but calling that number, even anonymously, you can give that person a lifeline and stretch away of help.
And I think this is a perfect opportunity, and because I want to say this so that we're not ashamed. A lot of the time, women of ethnic minority background are ashamed, are embarrassed. We know majority of the community that are trafficked into UK at the moment are Nigerians. When you look at the African black ethnic statistics. So we have Cameroonians, and a lot of the time people think, and I always find this, and I always say to my Nigerian sisters, listen, people assume that you're a professional, that you come from gentry or rich or high class. People don't think you are a victim. You can't say I am a victim. Don't be shy.
Victims of sexual violence and physical violence and exploitation. This type of crime knows no respect. It doesn't respect gender. It doesn't respect age. It doesn't respect country of origin. The more exposed
you are financially, I think the more risk you are, in fact, sometimes of being groomed, because obviously you want to make business, you want to come to the UK, you want to live whatever sort of community you're from in Africa or Asia or the Middle East, and there is always this, it's organized crime. Trafficking of women, especially women from Africa, it's organized, it's systemic. We know there are gangs, powerful gangs that are involved from Germany, Italy, and the UK that are doing this. I know there's a lot of focus sometimes on Eastern European, and so often we forget black and ethnic minority women. Majority of the women we see at migrant camps, for example, they're highly trafficked, or even the women that are coming through the canal or the Calais, or coming through the waters.
And it's become so sophisticated that there's the use of fake passports, there's the use of different means. So often when women want to ask for help, it's even hard for them to explain their history, but we know the sophistication. All you need to do is reach out and ask for help.
Yes.
We're going to take a very short break just before we come back for the last few moments. So hold on right there and we'll see you in a moment.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. And as we've been talking about the issue of violence against women and girls here in the UK, just a simple reminder that there are protection orders that you can seek when you're really looking for protection. The police have powers, the courts have powers. Firms like mine have the illegal aid contract, so we can grant you funding once you've reported the police for protection and applying to court. So I know that many women feel that they might have some backlash from family and from their community, but they must be convinced that there's help out there for them.
There's lots of help, and I think often, like you said, a lot of us could be embarrassed. We think, well, what am I doing to my husband who's invested so much money in bringing me to the UK, or my wife who spent her money
to bring me here.
I'm not working. I've come from a poor home. He paid 5 cows, and my parents are in debt now. What do I do? What we say is always, you got to think about yourself.
Yes.
Just what the airline stewardess usually do. It's when you death, obviously it's the end result in domestic violence or domestic homicide.
And say, if you're dead, I can't help you.
I can't help you. So, but we can take a molestation order, a non-molestation order, and for some people, for example, if you've come to the UK to join a spouse and you are a victim of domestic violence, you can apply to the Home Office to have special provisions that would help you. There's the domestic violence prevention orders that the police can issue out. In the case of FGM, if you're worried or scared, you think you might be a victim of FGM, you can apply for what we call the FGM prevention order.
Absolutely.
If you're a victim of forced marriage, you can apply. You can even get home security, home safety within your home.
Exactly.
If you don't want to flee and go into the refuge.
Put in your home.
Yes.
There are special panic buttons that can be put in your home.
They could be put in your home.
But let us talk just for a second about those women who may have become, and men who may have become desensitized to violence.
Yes.
They see it but they don't report it.
Yes.
Or they see it and they feel it's some kind of rite of passage and they don't speak up.
Well, yes, because again, hurt people hurt people.
Hurt people.
Once you've become immune, quote unquote, immune to violence breeds violence. And in so many cases you think, well, you are a victim of violence. Most of the women that perpetrate the violence of FGM are females.
Exactly.
Most women who are partners or whose partners kill tend to have female people that coerce and sort of work around that. So, but it's because they themselves are victims. Victim breed victims. We know victims groom when it comes to sexual exploitation or trafficking. Usually it's women that will be sent out. Even in gangs, we know it's the females. The honey trap.
Yeah.
So it's because they themselves have been used.
Have your wits about you. If you're walking home at night, don't have earpods in. Have your wits about you. Cross the road. Go into shops that you know are busy and active. Ask for help if you need to. Before we run away, how can anybody get hold of you?
Well, you can reach me on A Girl at a Time, which is the online organization that I run.
One girl at a time.
And as everybody knows, I'm big on social media because we use those platforms to send out information. So you could find me on Twitter at the Alima, TheAlima. I'm on Facebook as Alimatu Dimonekene. And you could drop me an emails because we understand sometimes people are under enormous pressure at info.info info at agirlatatime, one word, .org.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've been championing some boroughs. I know that we were discussing outside, and you said that Newham is taking a lead and has been doing a lot of positive steps.
Yeah, so I also do a day job. So I work for Hestia in Newham. We're the lead domestic violence service in the borough. In some ways, we extend into Barking and Dagenham sometimes. We offer training. We offer community workshops for anyone who wants to, in churches, in mosques, anywhere
Brilliant.
that you need some information about this issue. You can reach to Jennifer, and we'll be happy to come along.
So thank you very much, and thank you for staying with us. Again, if you see something, say something, please. And I'll see you next week. Until then, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And you stay safe and be good. And if you can't be good, be careful.